All right, let's jump right into this explainer. If you've ever looked at a massive, incredibly complex system like criminal justice and thought, how does this actually process human beings? Well, you are definitely in the right place. Today, we're taking some pretty dense criminology and translating it into the real-world pipeline that offenders literally experience. It's a fascinating look at how we try to take the chaotic, messy reality of human behavior and force it into neat, predictable little boxes. You know, this human urge to profile and sort of type behavior, it's centuries old. We're talking way before modern criminology even existed. The ancient Greeks tried to classify behavior based on bodily humors. And right here in Julius Caesar, Shakespeare hits the nail on the head, perfectly capturing that instinct to judge danger based on physical types. We've just always been absolutely desperate to categorize who is safe and who is a threat. So, here's our roadmap for today. We're taking a three-step journey through the system. First, the theory, then the practice, and finally, the future. Let's start with step one, the theory, or as it's known in criminology, typology. Okay, so understanding the gap between theory and reality is absolutely crucial here. Typology is our academic theory of who the offender is. It's the diagnostic side where researchers try to figure out what went wrong and prescribe a fix. Classification, on the other hand, is what the justice system physically does with them. And as you'll see, the system doesn't always perform as well as the academics might hope, mostly because putting complex psychological theory into actual practice is, well, it's incredibly difficult. These academic typologies can get ridiculously granular. Just look at Daniel Glazer's work from 1972. He didn't just label someone a thief or a murderer. He broke the categories way down. For example, you have your vocational predators who literally treat burglary like a 9-to-5 job versus avocational predators, maybe white-collar workers doing part-time crime just to supplement their income. He even identified quasi-insane assaulters. This is a wild category that includes those highly publicized, hard-to-understand cases like Chicago's Loban Leopold or Jack the Ripper. Basically, the academics have a highly specific box for almost every conceivable type of human failing. Which brings us to section 2, the practice. The actual physical pipeline of classification. First up, offenders face legal classification. Before anyone even looks at their psychology, we look at the law. We scale the severity of crimes using the FBI's index crimes to standardize reporting across the country. And this scale goes all the way from treason, which, fun fact, is actually right there in the Constitution, down to felonies, like murder, then misdemeanors, and finally just local municipal ordinances. This is really the first major sorting mechanism in the physical pipeline. The law also divides offenses into what you might call two philosophical buckets. On one side, we have mala and se. These are crimes that everyone globally agrees are just universally terrible, inherently damaging things like murder and theft. On the other side, there's mala prohibita, which are regulatory offenses. These are culture-bound, things like traffic laws or liquor laws. Basically, they're only illegal because a specific society at a specific time just decided to prohibit them. But here's where reality hits. Despite all those advanced academic typologies we talked about, like Glaser's subcultural assaulters, the deep irony is that massively understaffed prisons mostly just classify people based on their escape risk and perceived danger. The system simply isn't equipped to use all that deep clinical research. At the end of the day, they just need to know two things. Are you going to hurt someone, and are you going to try to run away? This basic need for security actually builds the physical ladder of the prison system. At step 1, maximum, you've got extreme isolation, solitary confinement, handcuffs, leg irons, the whole shebang. Step 2 is close custody, where inmates live inside the walls but work under armed supervision. Step 3, medium, scales it back to unarmed supervision outside the walls. By step 4, minimum, inmates are working outside without direct supervision. And finally, step 5 is community custody. This is where an offender might actually commute into the city for work or study, living in a community-based facility. Now, the system is constantly trying to push inmates down this ladder. And why is that? Well, because maximum custody is literally so incredibly expensive. The ultimate goal of the institution is to reduce custody levels to save the state money. Interestingly enough, community custody can actually reduce welfare costs. In some places, an inmate in community custody pays the state a few bucks a day for their keep, covers their own transport, and uses their earnings to support their family back home. It takes them right off the welfare rolls. So it's really an economic driver disguised as a rehabilitative one. Of course, this physical classification system didn't just appear out of nowhere. It's evolved a lot. It started with simply separating men and women in Spanish jails way back in 1519. Then we had the penitentiary movement kicking off in the US around 1790. Fast forward to 1929, the Federal Bureau of Prisons started developing a formal classification system. And by 1969, things had advanced so much that the US Bureau of Prisons rolled out a highly computerized sorting system. That 1969 system was called RAPS. It was essentially designed to systematize human potential by prioritizing resources based on four things. R is for rehabilitative potential, which is basically the staff's best guess on an inmate's likelihood to change. A is for age brackets. P is for prior sentences. And S stands for special classifications. These codes were literally fed into computers to decide who gets first priority for assignments and resources. And that takes us to Section 3, the future, and the very tricky science of prediction. Okay, when we talk about predicting if someone's going to succeed on parole, we usually assume that highly educated professionals know best, right? Well, Ferris Lowndes' 1936 study made this absolutely shocking discovery. It turned out fellow inmates were actually better at predicting parole success than the official parole board. He realized that the guys actually living inside the system had a way more accurate read on human behavior than the academics who were just reviewing paper files. To prove this, Lonnie actually sat down with inmates to figure out their specific hunches. And honestly, they were incredibly quirky but super accurate. For instance, if an inmate had an excessive interest in clothes, that was a minus, a really bad sign for a parole. If they loved white lights, meaning cabarets and dance halls, another minus. But industry and a solid work record in prison, huge plus. And get this, one of the key inmate assistants who helped compile these very hunches was none other than the infamous Nathan Leopold, who, remember, we literally just mentioned under Glasser's quasi-insane assaulter typology. So, cutting through all the dense academic theory, the intricate computer codes, and the legal tables, what actually predicts if someone will stay out of the system? It's remarkably mundane. The data shows that success pretty much hinges on basic life skills, good work habits, the ability to manage your personal budget and credit, and, quite simply, avoiding attracting police attention. That's it. Those everyday habits are the true determinants. Which leaves us with this final thought to ponder. Despite centuries of evolving labels, these complex security ladders, and sophisticated computerized predictive scales, how well can this invisible machinery ever truly capture the chaotic, messy complexity of human nature? We've built this massive, incredible system to categorize people, but at the end of the day, human behavior might just be a little too complex to ever fit perfectly inside a box. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning the machinery around you, and I'll catch you next time.